Now let's create an animated line chart. Again, let's go into Adobe Animate and make a new document. The size of your document is going to be 1370 by 790. The frame rate is going to be at 30, and we're going to keep it at Action Script. We'll say Create New, and this will give us our work area. Again, to zoom out, we'll go to the very top, and let's show the frame. So this will give us everything. As we did with the previous one, the first thing we need to do is establish a background layer to place our blank bar chart into. So with the layer 1 selected on your timeline, double click on it, and we'll call this my background. And with that selected, we'll go to File, down to Import, and choose Import to Stage. This time we're going to choose our blank line chart. When we say Open, this will place it inside of this area. Again, returning to our timeline, I'm going to lock down my background layer, and let's make one more new layer, and this will be our template. Oops, T-P-L-A-T-E, there we go, that we can place our different lines into. With our template layer selected, go up to File, down to Import, and again, import it to the stage, and simply choose the line PNG file. With that selected, say Open, and this will place our lines exactly where they need to be as well. We'll go back down to our timeline, double click on the little icon, and I'm going to lock down this layer and drop down its opacity. When we say OK, this will get it out of the way and allow us to work and draw lines on top of this. To draw each of our lines, we need to place those on their own separate layer for each individual color. So going down to our timeline, let's make one new layer. The first one's going to be our red line. With that layer selected, the tool we're going to use is our simple pen tool. Just like in Adobe Illustrator, the pen tool allows you to click and make straight line or curved line vector drawings. Just note that when you use it, make sure you've got the regular pen tool and not some of the other associated ones along with it. With the tool selected, before we do any drawing, go over to your Properties panel. Let's make sure the color of our stroke is going to be set to the appropriate color. So I'm going to click on the Fill Color. And as we did with the others, you get a little eyedropper tool. I'm going to pick up this bright color of red. The other thing we can do is to set the size, the style, the weight, and even the end caps for each of these. Now the size, you can click on it and drag it up and down. For now, I'm going to keep it right around 15 pixels. We'll keep it our basic style, and we won't worry about the variable width on it. But we do want to change the edges of it, instead of having a rounded cap, to just having a protected cap. Projected cap. We can also keep our miter joints nice and squared off too. From here, it's a simple matter of clicking on the red line and following it along. So one click, wherever there's a corner, this will draw on top of it. Now if you find yourself making a mistake and you need to change up the position of any of these points, don't use the black arrow selection tool. You'll find that when you click on it, it's going to give you kind of a funky little way of selecting things. Instead, use the white arrow sub-selection tool. This is hiding underneath your black arrow, but with it, this will give you your vector line that you can click on and be able to drag around and reposition where things need to be. So just know, when using the pen tool, use the white arrow selection tool to make selections and changes. Now let's do the same for the yellow and the blue lines as well. The next line we're going to do is going to be the yellow one. So I'm going to go down to my timeline, make a new layer. We'll call this the yellow line. Again, choose your pen tool, set your stroke color to be the pale yellow that we have. It'll remember the last settings that we did for the last stroke, and we'll simply click on each of the major corners for this line. Again, if yours is off by a little bit, that's okay. With those established, remember if you need to change it, use your white arrow selection tool. Mine looks good. So I'm going to go down to my timeline, make a final new layer up here. This will be our blue line. Got my pen tool. With the pen tool, we'll go over to our properties and make sure to choose the tool properties. And we'll set our fill color, or our stroke color in this case, to be the blue. And we'll draw our blue line on top of this. Right there. Now that we've got all three of our lines created, I want to be able to reveal each of these lines one at a time. Unlike the rectangles that we did in the bar graph, these aren't simply going to grow by stretching out. Instead, we want to create a mask that will reveal each one of these, and we're going to animate the mask as it moves along from one side to the other. So here's how we're going to create a mask for each individual line. Let's take it one line at a time. I'm going to go down to my timeline, and I'm going to turn off visibility for my blue and yellow lines by clicking on the little eyeball and turning it off. And just for safety's sake, I'm also going to lock those down. We're going to select our red line first, and on top of our red line, I'm going to make one new layer. This new layer I'm going to call the red mask, just so we know that it's going to be the mask for the red line. Note that the mask is on top of the area that we want to show. So with the red mask layer selected, I'm going to grab my rectangle tool. I'm going to set my fill color to be just a solid black, and I'm going to set my stroke color to be none, which is right here at the top. Now, wherever you draw the mask on top of an area, that's what's going to be shown. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to click and drag and draw a rectangle, in this case maybe over half of my line. So notice that I started over here and I ended it a little bit too close. If we want to create a mask area, this is what we're going to do. You can select a layer that's on top, and if you control or right click on it, you can turn it into a mask for this one. Notice now the layer structure for your layers. You've got the mask on top and the red line underneath it, and any area that was inside of that black area is now being visible, and any area on the outside is now invisible. So let's see if we can leverage that. First off, in order to make changes to this, I'm going to unlock my mask area so that I can see it. I've got my rectangle selected. I'm going to convert this to something that I can animate. So remember, with it selected, we can go to Modify and convert it to a symbol. I'll call it my red mask symbol. Finally, I'm going to stretch it out so that it goes over the entire red line area. So choosing my Select Transform tool, hold down Option as I click on this edge. Let's drag it all the way out. Now with it selected, if I want to see it applied, I can go to my timeline, and I have to lock it back down in order to apply it. The mask will disappear, but it will show me what it looks like on my timeline. Let's take it a step farther and actually animate the position of our mask so that it looks like it's going to reveal itself as it goes across. Here's the process to do it. I'm going to unlock my mask one more time, and on my timeline, let's say it's going to move in 15 seconds, or excuse me, 15 frames. So once again, I'm going to choose the 15th frame for my red mask. I'm going to control click on it, and we're going to insert a keyframe, meaning it's going to move. From here, let's also add some frameage for our red line. So I'm going to choose the frame below it, control or right click on it, and let's simply insert a regular frame so it will show up from here. And if we need to, we can do it for the background and the template layer too. So let's insert a frame and then insert another frame for our template. All right, let's go back to our red mask line. We want it to end right here on frame 15 so that it's revealed. So going back to frame number 1, we're going to move it out of the way by simply selecting it. I'm going to move it off to this side. Now we're going to create a tween by selecting the first keyframe and right-clicking or control-clicking, and made a classic tween so that when it animates, it's going to move our rectangle into position. To see this take effect, you need to lock down the layer one more time. And now when we play it, you can see it will reveal itself in our timeline. So this is the process we're going to do for the yellow and the blue line as well. Let's start by going down to our timeline. I'm going to turn off the visibility for our red mask and red line. And let's focus on the yellow line. So select the line with the color and make a new layer on top. We're going to call this our yellow mask. And we're going to right-click on this yellow mask layer, or control-click on it, and turn it into a mask layer. With that mask layer selected, we're going to unlock it, and inside of this layer, let's choose our rectangle tool, and let's draw a rectangle on top of our yellow mask, or our yellow line, the entire area. Remember, if you need to make it larger, choose your free transform. In my case, I will make it a little bit larger. As long as it covers up the whole area, that should be good. Also, with it selected, go up to Modify and convert it to a symbol. And so this will be our yellow mask symbol. With the mask selected, we can go down to our timeline, and let's add a keyframe on frame number 15 for our mask by control and clicking on it, and insert a keyframe. And we'll also need to add some time to our yellow line layer. So choose frame number 15 for it, control click on it, and let's insert just a blank frame. Now we can return to our mask timeline, and since it's unlocked, we can go to frame number 1. Let's move it out of the way. We'll pull it all the way over to the left-hand side. Now with it on frame 1 and out of the way, we can control click and we can create a classic tween. This will move it into position. We can test it out. To see the masking effect take effect, go ahead and turn back on your lock. And you can see, and we'll turn back on visibility for our yellow line too. There we go. And you can see the line start to appear as well. With that done, I'm going to turn off visibility for the mask, for the yellow mask and the yellow line. And finally, let's do the blue line as well. With the blue line layer selected, I'm going to unlock it. Let's make a new layer on top of it, and we're going to call this our blue mask. And we're going to right-click or control-click on it and make this a mask layer. Now this will lock down both of our layers so we can unlock them if necessary. But with the blue mask layer selected, let's choose our rectangle tool. Let's draw a black, got the wrong tool selected. Choose the right layer and draw a black rectangle that goes over the entire line. With it done, you can select it, go up to Modify, and convert it to a symbol. We'll call this our blue mask symbol. Again, return to your timeline, and let's create a new keyframe on frame number 15. Insert keyframe. We can also choose frame 15 for our blue line layer. Control click on it, and let's insert just a blank frame. With frame 15 in place, let's go back to our first keyframe on the blue mask line, and let's move our mask over to a starting point. We'll set it right there to the left-hand side. With our starting point set on frame number 1, we can insert or create our classic tween. We can test it out. Finally, to see the mask in effect, be sure to lock down both of your layers. And as you click and drag, you can see it will show your line. Now let's clean up our animation and our timeline. We can go down to our timeline layer, turn on visibility for all of your layers, but let's select our template layer and delete it away by clicking the trash can. Now when we play through, all of our lines will start to appear by themselves. Pretty cool. Again, you can play around with the timing of this by increasing the amount of time between your keyframes or by staggering them. Let's say I wanted to make this last a little bit longer. Let me show you another thing we can do. Carefully, I'm going to click on my first frame and drag down to the very bottom frame. Whenever you have all of these frames selected, you'll notice there is a yellow line that appears on the far right hand side. When I click on this frame, I can drag it over, and this will allow me to expand out my entire timeline, and it will automatically add more keyframes and frames in between. So this is a great simple way of adding and stretching out the time so that it lasts for a specific amount of time. Again, if I want to stagger these, it's a simple matter of selecting my frames by clicking the first one, hold down Shift. In this case, make sure to get both of your timelines, and then you can click and drag and move them over. Let's do the same for this one. Select it, hold down Shift, and click the second line, and we'll stagger this one. And now, when they come on, you'll start with one, and then draw the others while those come out too. Uh-oh, looks like I forgot to add the extra frames at the very bottom. That's an easy fix. Let me show you another great shortcut. You can select multiple frames by simply clicking and dragging to select all of those. And with each one of these frames in the same column selected, you can control-click on it, and let's just insert a frame, and it'll automatically add the frames to those two. Now we have a good-looking set of frames as our animation is built out. As we've done with the other ones, make sure to save this up as an animate file. File and save. This will be our line graph animation. And this animate file is what you're going to upload to the Moodle page once you're finished with it. Now let's finish up by doing our pie graph.